Right, welcome to Stress Month. I'm chatting with Polly Warren. Polly, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yes, hello. I am a health coach, well, a perimenopause health coach. So I really help women navigate this time in their lives to overcome that sort of physical and emotional roller coaster that is perimenopause. And the way I do that is through coaching and through support and through accountability, because a lot of the time, even when we know what to do, it's very, very hard to follow through and actually do it. So my job is to really help you follow through in a way that probably, you've always found really difficult. So that is my job. And often it's all about forming these new habits, new healthy habits in a really manageable way, which isn't going to mean you have to change your whole life. It's about taking small steps towards that direction. And before you know it, they're part of just what you do.
Awesome.
But yes, that's what we do.
So this month we're looking at stress. Now, obviously, stress is something that affects a lot of us in perimenopause.
Yes, and I do think stress is probably one of those most overlooked factors in treating perimenopause. Those high levels of cortisol and adrenaline can really negatively impact almost, every system in our body, from our brain to our gut to everywhere, our memory, everything. So I do think managing stress is probably a really critical thing to have in your sort of perimenopause toolkit. Because lots of those symptoms, which we have things like heart palpitations, things like hot flushes, things like exhaustion, low libido, those are all negatively impacted from stress as well. So if we can work on actually reducing our stress, all of those things are also going to be reduced as well, which is going to be great. So I think it's about looking at us as women who are notoriously busy and pulled in all directions at this stage of life. It's about pinpointing what we can do to really alleviate our stress. And for me, I think it's really important to note that there are different sorts of stresses. So there's stresses, there's obviously the external stress, which we all kind of are familiar about, that sort of feeling of being pulled in all different directions, and that kind of like just having too much on. But there's also that sort of internal stress, which a lot of us don't really think about when we think about stress, and that's kind of to do with sort of what we're putting in our body and what is going on inside of our body. So, and that is really affected, that really affects things like our blood sugar levels, and that whole blood sugar roller coaster. So often when I talk to my clients, we really sort of look at both of those areas to really sort of work out which one to start. Where do we start? What are the things we can start focusing on first?
And what I find interesting with the internal stress and the external stress is often the things we turn to try and manage the stress are actually the things that actually make it worse, aren't they?
Oh, I know, it's so annoying, isn't it? It's not, so things like, food, like, for me, it's that comfort. You kind of think, oh, I'd love to have a really big bowl of lovely, delicious pasta, or chocolate, or cake, and all that stuff, and alcohol, which ultimately really is kind of like liquid sugar, coffee. All of these things are really going to spike they all spike our blood sugar. So, we take those things in, and then our glucose levels are raised. And then when our glucose levels are raised, we're on that blood sugar roller coaster. And when we get that dip, because the insulin hoops it all up, cortisol is then released. And it's the cortisol which then obviously gives us all, is kind of raises our stress levels. So it's really difficult. So it's a matter of it's a chicken and egg in a way, isn't it? Because you've kind of got to reduce the stressors in a way. You've got to find ways of reducing the stressors, which are then going to have a knock-on effect to then to being stressed. So then you're not so likely to then grab those sort of comforting stress relievers, such as the cake and all of that. So yeah, I kind of think it's, you know, it's a matter of thinking, what tools do I have to really reduce those stresses? So, I mean, maybe we could talk about some of the things that people could do. And again, I think a lot of us know some of these things. So it's a matter of like going, oh, I know that, I know that. It's not a matter of like just going, right, I've just got to do all of them. It's a matter about maybe trying out some of them, see if they work for you, and then actually deciding picking maybe one thing which you're then going to really try and integrate into your day-to-day, and making it small, not trying to take
Absolutely. And I think that's really important, because I think a lot of the time, you know, you see these magazine articles or whatever which say, oh, manage stress by doing these things, and you're like, whoa, I'm stressed just reading that, you know. That's far too much information. So what would be some of the really little but positive things that people can do?
So one really good hack, which I really love, and this is brilliant for stimulating that vagus nerve, which kind of can really immediately sort of help us, kind of our whole system kind of relax. And also it can really help before we eat, because before we eat, if we can be in a state of relaxation, we are going to assimilate our nutrients better, we're going to digest our food better. Everything's going to, you know, that's when you can start losing weight, if that's what you want to, well, not losing weight, but kind of like, you know, just managing your body, what's going on. And that is a bit of breath work, and it will take you 2 minutes. And it's I mean, you can do various breath works, but the one I like is the 5-5-7 breath. So if you breathe in for 5 and then hold the breath for 5 and then breathe out for 7, and you do that 10 times, which will probably take you about 2 minutes, you will hopefully, you'll definitely feel calmer. And the idea is that you're shifting from that sort of sympathetic nervous system, which is when you're in a state of stress, to the parasympathetic nervous system, which is when you're relaxed. And that will immediately reduce levels of cortisol, which are being produced, reduce levels of adrenaline, and make you feel much better. So that literally is a 2-minute exercise, which I'd really recommend to do before you eat if you're feeling really sort of, you know. So that's something you can do. You know, you can even do sort of, people, you know, when people hear of meditation, people are like, oh God, you know, I don't want to do that. I've tried that. It means I've got to sit cross-legged on the floor with my, you know, you can do a 1-minute meditation, and you can do that. You could even do that standing up, or and that is literally just closing your eyes and just sitting up, you know, sitting straight, spend 20 minutes just relax, just focusing on relaxing your face, your jaw, your shoulders. Maybe spend then moving into 20 seconds of just following your breath, and that is it. And then 20 seconds of doing nothing. And so it's literally, that is another thing you can do. And it's a minute. It's a minute of just, you know, just sitting and breathing. But it's about being intentional about that minute. That is the hardest thing. It's about going, right, I'm just going to spend a minute now and just focus on my breath. So those are 2 really easy, quick things.
And those are things that, and this is, you know, something that I hear sort of time and time again, is people, oh, I haven't got time, I don't have time to do this. But actually, a minute, that can be while you go to the loo, you know, like, so you can always escape for a minute, whether you're in a hectic office, whether you're, you know, whatever, you can always escape for a minute.
Exactly, you can. And I just think, and if you can't, maybe it's when you're doing the washing up after you've eaten. And again, a lot of people might go, oh God, don't talk about my foot. I was one of those. I can say that I was. But now, again, if I tell you when I do it, is folding up laundry, which is one of the jobs I hate more than anything. Is like, you know, having 3 kids, huge amount, who all do sport. I have, you know, so I've got a huge amount of laundry, and folding it up has always been like, oh God. Now what I'll do is I'll intentionally go into that job, and rather than thinking it's that, oh, haven't got time for this is so annoying, I hate it, I go into it going, actually, this is a moment where I can just spend really thinking, oh, I'm going to spend this on myself, this is good for my mental health, I'm actually not doing anything else, I'm just going to fold these up into 5 lovely piles. And it's just the narrative that you're telling yourself, and making the most of that time without constantly wanting just to rush it and get to the end of it as quickly as you can, so you can go and sit on the sofa or whatever. It's about actually finding that some sort of peace and in that. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. And I mean, I know that being able to just kind of get present, I guess, is the easiest term for it, in whatever task you're doing, and just go, okay, well, rather than rushing to get this done, I'm just gonna, oh, that t-shirt feels nice, okay, there we are. Oh, right, I'm just thinking about these things, you know, rather than like, oh god, it's another chore that has to happen. It's a nice way to just bring ourselves back into ourselves, isn't it, rather than constantly being on the go. And yeah, there are tasks that we all hate doing, there really are, but we can find, by just focusing on our senses while we're doing it and our breathing while we're doing it, we can make it a time to calm ourselves.
Exactly, and that, you know, that's what it means to be mindful, is just focusing, just bringing it back to the present and focusing on our senses, you know, touch, taste, smell, you know, it's just about really appreciating it for what it is rather than racing through it. So yeah, I think that's a really good one. Another thing which you can do, you know, if you love music or you know, singing has been proven, you know, singing, chanting, humming have all been proven to stimulate that vagus nerve as well, which helps put us into that relaxation state. So, you know, if there's a song on the radio which comes on, or you love, you know, you're in your car, just belt it, turn it up and belt it out.
Yeah,
and that,
in the run up to Christmas, we all know every song that's coming on the radio.
Yes, exactly. And there's nothing better, is there, than having a really good old sing song. And you without, you know, notice how you feel it before you do it, and notice how you feel after you've sung, and you will feel a lot better.
Yeah.
So it's these little sort of hacks which I think, if we can incorporate them into our day-to-day, really just help to make us feel better. Because there's also the obvious ones, which are things like movement. You know, once we move, we tend to feel better, and then obviously endorphins, if we exercise, you know, a bit harder, then we get the feel good endorphins, which obviously make us feel better as well. So I'm a great advocate for that, but I think we've just got to start small if you're somebody who feels they don't have the time.
One thing, I'm just going to quickly go back to the singing along thing, and then we'll draw this to a close before we overwhelm people with more things. But one thing I love about the singing thing is, without even realizing it, you're probably doing some pretty full-on breathing work.
Yes, absolutely.
You aren't just breathing your little shallow breaths, because you can't whilst you're belting out wham or whatever. You're you know, so actually you are using the whole breath, and then breathing in, and then using the whole breath. And I think that's lovely, because you don't notice that you're doing it.
Yes, yeah, you're getting kind of that breath work in unknowingly, which is a great, yeah, brilliant. And that is what we want to do, because when we're stressed, you know, we know that we're breathing much more shallow, much shallower. So it's about kind of extending, controlling our breaths and making them longer. So yeah, absolutely, I think it's a great one. Another one which I did this one in lockdown, actually. I was part of this so it was a kind of an exercise class, and as the warm-up, and we were all online, the warm-up every day, the person taking the class was actually a brilliant DJ as well, and he would always put on amazing tracks at the start, and that was warm-up, and that warm-up was just to dance as if no one was watching.
Awesome. And
at first you feel a bit fun, a bit self-conscious, whatever, and he was like, turn your video off if you don't want it. But actually, oh my goodness, 4 or 5 minutes of dancing round, I used to do it in my garden, it was just the best, just makes you feel amazing. So sorry, I've got the hoovers going upstairs, I don't know if you can hear it. And that and again, if you're feeling rubbish, that can really help. And I know that's not going to work for everyone, but it's about just sort of giving yourself those little moments of intentional time to yourself to just raise your sort of vibration and raise how you're feeling.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Polly.
No worries. My absolute pleasure.